All right, so we are moving for our mental health and our brain health. I'm really excited about this talk. As we know, it is the 30-30 challenge. I'm just excited. The weather is getting better and people are out and it's busy and people are moving. I'm hoping that once we are done with this talk, there is a renewed commitment and a lifelong commitment to movement. We all know that exercise is super good for our physical health. We know that. I don't need to talk about it with you guys. We know that it's good for glucose levels and weight loss and looking good and feeling good when it comes to just our physical body. We know that it's good for our, lymphatic system to have this kind of movement. So the physical health benefits, weight loss, etc., are countless, and I'm not talking about the physical health benefits of that. Although if that's what convinces you, then go right ahead, because that's going to be great. But I am really now going to be talking about brain health and mental health, as I'm a psychologist. And for me, I think it was really, really just important to understand the mechanisms behind, I just felt better when I was moving. I felt my mood was better. I was less anxious. I was learning better. I wasn't wanting to reach out for my phone and look at social media as much. What is behind all of this? That's what I'm here to talk to you guys about, because I want you to understand, once we're done with this talk, about the impact of exercise. And I'm not just talking about movement. I'm talking about movement / rigorous exercise on our memory, learning, mood, anxiety, attention, stress, addictions. And it is no surprise that as we move less, these issues are getting more. So there is now absolutely overwhelming information out there, overwhelming research. In fact, in 2011, which is quite some time ago, so I'm sure there's more now, the Mayo Clinic actually went through 1,600 papers, and there was no disputing that exercise had a positive effect. Memory, learning, performance, mood, motivation, all of that. So I want to talk about that today, and then when and how to best exercise and move, because we're always, wanting to get a little bit detailed about what's the best way to do it. So I will talk about that as well. So let's start with a quote. In order for man to succeed in life, God provided him with two means: education and physical activity, not separately, one for the soul and the other for the body, but for the two together. Love that. With these two means, man can attain perfection. This is Plato. Not separately, but the two together. Movement and education, movement and learning. This is how we stay healthy. This is how we stay engaged. This is how we remain spiritual. This is how we remain relational. The two together. Not one for the body, one for the mind, but the two together. And I find this to be very, very powerful. So let's talk a little bit about sedentary versus physically inactive. Physically inactive means not doing enough physical activity, which means you're not meeting the guidelines according to NICE or the World Health Organization, or just the medical and physical health community. Sedentary means that you're sitting or lying down for long periods. So you can actually be going to the gym, be a gym rat when it comes to just being in there for 2 hours a day, but the rest of the day you sit all day, you would be considered sedentary, because you can be meeting the physical activity guidelines, but still be considered sedentary if you are not moving enough. So moving all day long is going to be an important part of it. How much? At least 3 to 5 minutes every hour is where we're shooting, but we'll get to that. But correcting sedentary behavior is really just about increasing your physical activities in small ways throughout the day. So there is physical activity that I'm going to be recommending, but I want you to know that sedentary behavior has increased. We are moving 38% less than our paleo cousins, thousands of years ago, that used to walk at least 10 miles a day to be able to just eat. So think about how much movement there was, whether we were gathering or hunting or something where we had to move to get food. That's basically our genetic coding. And now, because of physical inactivity and sedentary behaviors, the fourth greatest risk factor for mortality is physical inactivity, which 4 to 5 million deaths a year could be prevented. And so what is physical inactivity? Where you are not at least moving for 150 minutes of moderate exercise or 75 minutes of vigorous exercise per week. I'll talk about what moderate and intense, all of that is later. But if you are not doing moderate, this is about jogging level, where your heart rate is, 60, 75%, you are considered physically inactive. And that is actually quite a lot of people that are not getting their heart rate up to this level. So no, walking from the parking lot to your office does not count as physical activity. And yeah, sure, you can get 10,000 steps a day, but again, we're looking at the heart rate. We're wanting things to be at a certain heart rate in order for us to get the best benefits for our mental health and our brain health. Sedentary lifestyles and physical inactivity is a risk factor for non-communicable diseases, such as high blood pressure, high blood pressure, body mass index, smoking, and then physical inactivity. So think about all of these things that we have, and physical inactivity is a risk factor for these non-communicable diseases. Non-communicable mean they're not contagious, but actually due to lifestyle. So coronary heart disease, cerebrovascular diseases, strokes, etc. Type 2, this is stuff that we're doing to our bodies because of our diet and our lifestyle. Hypertension, even cancers like lung cancer, prostate cancer, breast cancer, colon cancer has been linked to physical inactivity. Osteoporosis, fractures, hip, as people get older, breaking of bones and hip bones and knees, all of this kind of issues that we have in our body when it comes to our bones are linked to inactivity, dementia, and mental health conditions. I'm going to spend a lot of time on dementia because for me, that was the biggest issue. I know several people we've never had dementia in our family or in my husband's family. And now we're seeing that as there's even earlier onset of dementia. So what is going on? And I think the poor sleep linked with poor diet, linked with low movement, and we just have a dementia waiting to happen. And so how do we protect our brain? And the single most powerful way you can protect your brain is through your lifestyle, mainly being the sleep and the movement, and everything is linked to everything. So when I say sleep, you sleep better when you move better when you sleep. So these things are just one. And so we really need to start thinking about using these things that are genetically coded into us as being important and helped us survive for thousands of years on this planet. They helped us survive, and they helped us thrive, and they helped us innovate, and they helped us create the fire, and all the way from the innovation of fire and agriculture all the way to technology. It was because we were moving. And so let's talk. Oh, when it comes to adolescence, and I want to talk about adolescent because I'm really concerned about adolescents. 1 out of 4. I know they say 1 out of 5, but some research is now saying 1 out of 3 kids, especially after the pandemic. And the pandemic really made people quite physically inactive, physically sedentary. I mean, when the pandemic hit, I got everybody a Fitbit and we were like moving. We were walking in circles around our house, but whatever it is, we really made it challenges for our family, for our workplace, where we were having awards and things like that for our team, for our groups of people that I was associated with, because there was just so many risk factors associated with substance use, self-worth, self-confidence, bone health, metabolic syndrome. This is the diabetes stuff, the cardiovascular diseases, poor pro-social behavior. So like lack of compassion, lack of empathy, lack of engagement, increased aggression, reduced academic achievement, increased depression, reduced quality of life, all are linked to excessive screen time and physical inactivity, because if you're on your screen, you're not moving. So even the things that are linked to excessive screen time could be that it might not be the screen time, because there's no like causal link, but it might not be the screen time, but it could be that they're not moving enough. That is, there's not enough protective factors in place. They're not engaging enough. So I just did a talk this morning where people were like, well, how do I get my kid to stop using the screen? And it's not about not using the screen only, it's about what are they doing instead. We need to be thinking about that. Are they engaging in arts and music and creative stuff, as well as physical movement stuff, as well as social stuff, as well as relational stuff? If we are focusing on that front, the screen time, you just have less time to do it. So think about what we want to increase rather than only focusing on what we want to decrease, because those are the things that are necessary for brain, social, mental, emotional health. You have the power to change your brain. All you have to do is lace up your running shoes. This is John Ratey. John Ratey has studied the brain now for over 40 years. He's one of the guys that I love listening to. Super practical, has written awesome books on exercise and being in nature and eating from nature and how that impacts our brain health and mental health. He is a clinical professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, and he is recognized internationally as an expert in neuropsychiatry. And so a lot of my research I bring from him, but also from other places. But he really makes it very simple to understand for those of you who want to know more about it. So let's just move right into it. Let's talk about movement and our brain, exercise and our brain. So I want you to see this brain. Now, toxic levels of stress, which many of us are experiencing right now because it's just ongoing chronic stress. If we know that burnout is on an increase and it's at the highest it's ever been, and mental health and sort of depression is the leading cause of disability worldwide, we can then make the assumption that we are experiencing toxic levels of stress. And when that happens, it erodes the connections between the nerve cells in the brain, and it actually shrinks parts of the brain. What exercise does is it releases a surge of neurochemicals and growth factors that reverse this process and protect against further damage. So it's neurogenerative and neuroprotective. Exercise increases this thing called BDNF. It is a protein, it is a growth factor, and it is a major contributor to neuronal plasticity and neurogenesis. Plasticity is how much can my brain keep learning, keep growing, keep challenging itself, keep innovating, keep flexible, all of that has to do with neuroplasticity. Now, sorry, there's a bug here. And what BDNF does, and I really encourage you guys to learn about BDNF. When I exercise for BDNF. Of course, I want to look good. I want to feel good. I want all those other neurochemicals inside of me also. But for me, the single biggest thing that I am shooting for is how am I going to release BDNF in me? Because it protects and repairs your brain cells. It increases the growth of new brain cells. It improves your learning and your memory and your mood. Researchers actually consider it a natural antidepressant. It helps heal the brain from damage. So all the bad decisions you might have made in your adolescence and all the things that we're doing to damage our brain through all of this technology use and social media use, I am releasing the BDNF to protect my brain from that. It helps through injury or stroke, so exercise would be important. And then it helps to actually move into deeper, slow wave sleep, and it regulates your appetite. It helps you lose weight just because it's signaling to the hippocampus that you feel less hungry. So women who were overweight tended to have lower levels of BDNF in their blood. And so it's linked to so many other things like a misalignment with the circadian rhythms, poor diet, lack of sensory stimulation, getting older. So BDNF is really something that we need to learn more about and we need to do more about. There was research done on marmoset monkeys when they reach adulthood. So we kind of have thought that, okay, there's a lot of neurogenesis that happens in childhood and adolescence. So meaning neurogenesis is when the brain is creating new brain cells. Okay, so this is what we think happens in childhood. Then we think we reach adulthood and we're good. We've gotten there, we're reached maybe 25 and our brain is fully formed. Well, the research shows that when you reach adulthood, so anywhere in your late 20s, early 30s, the rate at which the neural cells form in the hippocampus begins to decline. So this is not like it's an ongoing thing, that our brain continues to form new pathways and new neural cells and new neural brain cells, right? We think that, okay, once we get to adulthood, it should be somewhat stable. It actually isn't stable. It actually starts to decline. And then it actually starts to really be compromised if we are not moving enough. So neurogenesis will continue past puberty. This is not something we knew before, but we are learning now that that BDNF can, until we take our last breath on Earth, we can continue to grow new brain cells. Wow, that's awesome. I love that. But it has to be stimulated. This is not something that just happens in childhood. It just happens. In adulthood, we actually have to stimulate that through movement being one of the ways. But then there's also other ways that we can do that through our diet, through our sleep, through other things. We can talk about BDNF a bit later. Maybe I just do a whole other talk on BDNF because it's just so exciting. So this is what movement is and for our brain. Movement. So when we look at healthy BMI, which is our body mass index, and aerobic exercise, you have better learning, better working memory, better processing speed, better attention. These are all issues related to ADHD. Learning, working memory, processing speed, attention. These are all compromised in someone with ADHD. When you include aerobic exercise as part of their treatment, they will have better treatment results. Exercise also promotes and prepares the brain. So it's actually like saying, all right, guys, open up in order for you to bind and learn new things. So I think if you listen to the Huberman podcast, he really takes quite complicated concepts and just makes them super simple. He did a podcast on memory and learning, and I actually applied it for when I had to do my TEDx talk. And I would listen while I walked, and I remember I recorded myself giving the talk, and then I would walk and listen, and new ideas would come up for me. But also when I would sit down, and it would lock into my memory at that point. So I would listen to it while I was walking, even after I was walking, and it would really, and then the day came when I had to do my TEDx talk, and they told me the monitor wasn't working. So I literally had to do an 18-minute monologue without cards, without a monitor, and it came. So I know for sure that this works because I've tried it and I've tested it, that you are learning better, you are remembering better when you listen to, when you learn after you have moved. So the way, if I really want to lock it in, I will listen to it while I'm listening to a concept while I'm walking, before, after I'm walking. This is how I would do it. There are many studies that show that exercise improves executive functioning, which is also weak in people that have ADHD. We remember, plan, predict better when we have stronger, thicker frontal cortex. So this is all stuff that's being compromised now due to all of our, instant gratification through social media and through technology and all of this other stuff. We are actually compromising some of these things that used to happen naturally in our brain. We now have to actually work towards that. And then research also shows that exercise can diminish the impact of brain changes on cognition, not just prevent it. So if you are feeling like, oh, my memory is feeling compromised, oh, I don't know, I just can't hold my attention as long, or you know what, I just keep grabbing for that food, or I keep grabbing for that social media, you actually cannot just prevent it, but you can diminish the impact of brain changes as you get older. So exercise provides an unparalleled stimulus, creating an environment in which the brain is ready and willing to learn. There was research done in Sweden with 1.2 million boys from 1950 to 1976, and they entered the military. So they finished high school at 15, they entered the military at 18, and 270,000 of those people were brothers, and 1,300 of those people were identical twins. And they tested their cardio and their muscle and their cognitive appraisals, and at 15 and at 18. And they found that the boys that had better cardio fitness had better IQ, and they were just better smarts, as they said, and not just muscle strength, but they went on to be better educated. So they went on for further studies. They were more satisfied with life, and they had higher socioeconomic standings. And researchers in Germany found that people who studied, so they, like, for example, you're learning vocabulary words or you're learning a TEDx talk, they learned 20% faster following exercise than they did before exercise, because immediately they're releasing BDNF into there, and their brain cells are just preparing to learn. So 20% faster than if you were to just do it if you get up. Well, I'll talk about that a little bit, but in the US, they have certain schools with the 0 hour where they actually exercise before they go in to learn, because that actually primes their brain and it makes it just ready to learn. What about movement and mental health? So exercise is not just a simple therapeutic option, but one of the best treatments we have for most psychiatric problems. Exercise changes the brain chemistry immediately, okay? And all the neurotransmitters are targeted in psychiatry for depression, anxiety, attention, as well as addictions. In one study, almost 34,000 people were followed over 11 years, and they found that 12% of those people that had depression could have been prevented just by 1 hour of exercise. So we can prevent depression, we can prevent anxiety just by doing even 1 hour of exercise a week. People who engage in regular exercise are less likely to abuse drugs, but also for those who were in treatment for addictions, it helps them reduce their cravings, because there was a study done on mice, I think, mice. I think it was mice, where on rats, sorry. It was researchers, and they offered rats a dispenser with various drugs like nicotine, morphine, and amphetamines. And the rats that used the wheel and exercise, they hit the dispenser less than those that didn't have the wheel. So it's actually, whether it's a distraction, whether it's because it's working on the dopamine, the serotonin, the norepinephrine, all of these GABA, it's working on some of these things, GABA as well as the BDNF. It's working on these parts of your brain, which actually then make it easier for you to not crave certain addictive substances or activities. Exercise is considered an anti-anxiety. It's considered an antidepressant. Getting your heart rate up changes the brain chemistry. It increases the availability of neurochemicals such as serotonin and GABA, as well as BDNF and endocannabinoids, which is basically our brain's like chill pill. And it increases that in your brain and your blood. And so what you're doing at that point is you're just literally, some research, according to John Rady, is that in Duke, I think it was Duke University, found that exercising 30 minutes a day was equivalent to exercise every day was equivalent to treatment with Zoloft, and they had, it was equally effective. So now if you take exercise as part of the treatment, so whether you're engaging in therapy and then you have medication, and part of that, as the National Institute for Healthcare and Excellence, NICE, they're called NICE recommendations, which are globally recognized. They even recommend group exercise as an option for people with mild to moderate depression. And that would be more than once a week, and it would be with a practitioner for at least 10 weeks. So this is part of a treatment. It also combats loneliness. It makes us more social. It's better for our self-esteem. It's better for our confidence. It makes us feel more in control. It gives us a sense of pride. I know that when COVID hit, oh my God, I got a treadmill. I mean, I know we were walking around in circles, but I also was just like, I just need to move. You will never see me sitting. I even do standing meetings, and you will always see me moving around. At the end of the day, I have like 20,000 steps, because even if I don't exercise, I'm moving around a lot. I don't just stand in one place. I had a standing desk, I had a walking desk, I had a treadmill, because for me, it's very important to think on my feet. And there is something to say about we think better on our feet. And so, and John Rady says that if exercise came in a pill form, it would be plastered across the front page, hailed as the blockbuster drug of the century, because it has so many benefits for mental health, for brain health. And I think that's the sad part, that even when that research was released about Zoloft, I think it was on like page 14 or 19 of the New York Times, this because people don't want you to know that you have control. They want you to rely on medications and pharmaceuticals and things of that sort. Now, I'm not saying that medication is not a treatment option. I work in a clinic, we have psychiatrists, we do psychotherapy, we do psychiatric medication treatment for mental health issues, but I'm saying you also can take control by helping your brain get better, so you can eventually come off of some of those medications if you are in that mild to moderate range. It also is great for stress. It reduces stress. It induces relaxation. It also has this awesome effect on the brain. They found that people who exercised, they just didn't respond to threat in the same way as people who didn't exercise. So you actually become a little bit more immune to certain threats when you exercise. This, I thought, was awesome. So exercise makes you less makes you more resistant to threats in the immediate and long term. And the stressors have to be more threatening in order for you to react. And there's many theories about this, but one of them is that when we exercise, so let's just say I'm running and I'm at that 75% of my maximum heart rate, I am inducing a stress response in my system. So let's just say I was a few hundred years ago, let's just say 500 years ago, 600 years ago, and I was running. It was almost like my body is inducing a fight or flight response in order for me to run. Why would you run at that time? You were running from an enemy, you were running from a threat, you were running from a predator. That's when you would be running. So the brain doesn't know that I'm running on a treadmill or I'm running from a tiger. And so I'm inducing this kind of stress response in my system, and I'm literally inoculating myself. It's like vaccination for the threat. So now when a threat happens, somebody yells at me or somebody gets upset with me or some bad news comes my way and my heart rate increases, it's not sending a signal to my brain saying, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. It actually is saying, okay, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. It really has to hit a high level in order for me to consider it threatening. So this is where the stress response is actually reduced. Now, I do a lot of public speaking. My heart races every single time before I get up on stage. And my reaction to that doesn't seem that bad because I've actually trained my body and my brain to be used to this kind of heart rate rather than think of it as a threat to my system. So it's really, really great kind of desensitizing your system to threat so that the threat has to be bigger when you actually react. It also makes you more present. I've worked with men who were very cerebral, professional services, lawyers, consultants, and they sit all day long and they think all day long, and they're actually quite dissociated and disengaged from their bodies. And so getting them in their body, and it was like, oh my God, it's like the first time I don't actually think about that project or that client or that need. I'm actually just focused on, oh my God, this muscle is really being stressed at this point, or that hurts, or oh, let me do another rep. And so it really brings you into that present moment. So it's very mindful. It's a mindfulness activity. It reduces muscle tension, increases blood flow, and it just improves your resilience because of its effect on stress. Now, this is something really, really important. And as I get older and I realize that there is perimenopause and menopause, women are at a higher risk for Alzheimer's due to the hormonal shifts that happen for them. You are at higher risk for dementias if you are physically inactive. Okay, exercise makes the brain resilient to aging, and it prevents the brain from atrophying or eroding. So it keeps it at this kind of high-pitched, engaged level. High intensity exercise, which is about 75 to 90% of your maximum heart rate, releases the human growth hormone. You got to love the human growth hormone. The human growth hormone is one of the best things about the human body. It repairs everything in our body, including tissue repair, muscle repair. But also what it does is it helps you release this kind of human growth hormone in parts of your brain. It's called the body's craftsman. Master craftsman. It burns fat, it builds muscle fibers, it balances neurotransmitters, it boosts production of beneficial growth hormone factors like the BDNF. It pumps up your brain volume, meaning that high intensity exercise reverses the loss, So you have loss, you exercise, reverses the loss of brain volume that naturally occurs with aging. As we age, we will lose brain volume. It is just the normal part of the aging process. It just doesn't produce the same kinds of growth hormones. But when we exercise, we're literally hacking aging, which is so exciting. So you can prevent the onset of cognitive decline and diseases like Alzheimer's disease. Regular exercise decreases the risk of both dementia and bouts of depression among the UK by 30%. The BDNF is also released again for aging populations. And, you know, when I say aging, anybody above 40, we need to start thinking about this stuff. It actually will release this BDNF, which is considered the miracle grow of your brain, and it thickens the hippocampus. And the hippocampus is really the memory and the learning center. And those are the first things that get compromised. This is where dementias come in. So, I mean, there's so much research. I really could talk about this all day long, but just know that exercise protects and reverses damage, protects against damage, and also reverses damage. And for women, really, really, I cannot stress this enough. You have to do it as if it was a medication, like a prescription that I'm writing to protect against cognitive decline. For me, when I learned about the effects of sleep on cognitive decline, because I was one of those people that said, I'll sleep when I'm dead. But, you know, I think Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher said the same thing, and they both got Alzheimer's because they didn't believe in sleep, because they didn't think they needed as much rest. It is not about rest. It actually is about what the brain does, the brain and the body does when you go to sleep. And one of the main risk factors for Alzheimer's is poor sleep. Another main risk factor for Alzheimer's is poor activity, or sedentary or physical inactivity. So these are just things we can control. We have control over this, and they call it like biohacking. It's no biohacking. Just go back to the way we used to be. We used to move a lot, and so just go back to moving a lot. So movement and creativity. This also is very important for me as someone who is a creative, someone who needs to find different ways of communicating messages and ways, you know, just being creative, problem solving in my life. Just when it comes to my kids, or when it comes to, you know, being in my relationships, we need creativity. And they found that, you know, Stanford University found that just by doing something as simple as walking, you could increase your creativity 60% while walking. And it continued for 10 minutes after they stopped. So some of the most awesome ideas that I've had were when I was walking. And when I'm on the treadmill, and I actually have to like pause and like leave voice notes for myself or type something out, because I'm like, oh my God, yeah, that too. So I will actually even go into my exercise, or even go into my my walking session with a question that I'm struggling with. What should I do with this? And how should I handle that? And what should I consider this? And then I let my brain do its thing. And through these kinds of moments, I will have this aha moment. Whether it was the Netherlands or Austria, Germany, all researchers have said that the impact of regular exercise on human imagination, there is a clear relationship between imagination and healthy lifestyle, positive moods, being innovative, improved divergent and convergent thinking. So multiple solutions as well as one solution. All of this is linked to exercise. Whether it was rigorous or not, didn't matter. So even just going for a walk will do it. And then exercises, young people. There is so much research out there, and I mentioned to you guys about the school that are doing the 0 hour, and they found that exercise, they had better impulse control, they had less school suspensions, they had less behavioral issues, they had better attention, they had higher rates of test scores, whether it was reading scores or math scores. They ranked top in the world with when it was they had low BMI as well as physical activity. So obesity is not just an issue with their body and their image and their self-esteem. It is an issue to do with their brain as well, and their learning and their motivation and their fatigue and their academic performance and their lifelong success. So if we are thinking about childhood obesity, which is rampant right now, we need to be thinking about what's happening in that brain of theirs, what's happening in that class of theirs. For me, the physical aspects of it are less concerning as to what are they not doing that they're meant to be doing in their childhood. So mood and anxiety and this kind of learned helplessness, this immobilizing kind of thing that happens when they're overstressed and under pressure, we want to give them that activation. And that's why having people, I think there was a research done on like CEOs and very successful people and like, women CEOs. And I think over 90% of them were athletes. You just have to be. It builds resilience, it builds stamina, it builds this, ability to go forth in face of crises. So you want to find ways to build that in. So having team sports are great, but just movement as well as just toxic effects of stress. So I want to read this quote again by John Rady. Today, of course, there's no need to forage and hunt to survive, yet our genes are coded for this activity and our brains are meant to direct it. Take that activity away and you're disrupting a very delicate biological balance that has been literally fine-tuned for over 500,000 years. Quite simply, we need to engage our endurance, metabolism to keep our bodies and brains in optimal condition. The ancient rhythms of activity ingrained in our DNA translate roughly to the varied intensity of walking, jogging, running, sprinting, because we did all of these. We're genetically coded for this. So he said, in broad strokes, I think the best advice is to follow your ancestors' routines, which was to walk or jog every day, because they did that, run a couple times a week, because we went hunting, and then go for a kill every now and then by sprinting. So either you're being chased or someone is chasing you. So you want to think about doing it every single day. You want to think about doing a moderate exercise a few times a week, and then intense exercise, 1 or 2 times a week. So think about how our ancestors lived, because that is that delicate biological balance that has been fine-tuned. That is what is being disrupted right now. That is why there is so much dis-ease in the world. And not to say that there are people that are not able to live well into their 80s and 90s and are physically healthy, cognitively healthy, are able to do the things they've done in their life, but their brains are functioning well and their bodies are functioning well. 100% of them will say that it has to do with movement and obviously their diet, but movement is part of their sort of toolkit. So how much exercise is best? Well, most people think of exercise as running. There are many ways to get the heart pumping. And what you want to do is really get the heart pumping, okay? So there are 4 different kinds. You want to think about cardio, strength training, balance, and flexibility. Both aerobic and non-aerobic are operating as effective antidepressants for mood. So for people who are active, I want you to turn it up. For people who are not active, I want you to just get moving. So that's what I'm going to say about what exercise is the best. And the best exercise is the one that you will come back to. So if it's taking you all the will in the world to get up and do something, don't do that. But if it's like, oh, if I go out with my friend and we go for a walk and we go for a run, I'll go do that. Go do that. So the best exercise for people is something they will come back to. Now, aerobic exercise has been linked to better brain health. It increases the BDNF expression. So we want to think about aerobic exercise. We want that cardio aerobic exercise. Now, what is that? This is probably a screen you want to take a picture of. Aerobic exercise is best for like running and swimming, appears to be best for brain health. But strength training obviously is good because sometimes we're really pushing ourselves and our heart rate goes up, but we really are looking for that heart rate to go up. So at least 150 minutes of moderate exercise every week. How do you calculate your brain? How do you calculate your maximum heart rate? You take 220 minus your age. So let's just say you're 40 years old. Your maximum heart rate is 180. You then take 50 to 65% of that, and that's going to be low intensity. People can get to 50 to 65% just by walking. A brisk walk is enough. That's considered low intensity. You want to be in that moderate intensity space every single day of the week. So this is what the American College of Sports Medicine says. John Ratey does not think this is enough. So, but this is the least you can do, okay? So you want to do strength training for all major muscles for at least 2 times a week, flexibility for all major muscles at least 2 times a week, and balance and coordination at least 2 times a week. Now, what John Ratey does, he says in order to really optimize, remember, this is the guy who's been studying it for over 40 years, so I'm going to go with him, that you want to actually increase your aerobic exercise to 6 days a week. That means around 250 to 300 minutes of aerobic activity a week. I was like, oh my God. Now, remember, even 1 hour a week is going to give you antidepressant effects or anti-anxiety effects, right? It's going to relieve symptoms of anxiety, depression, stress, etc. But what I'm talking about, that BDNF and that human growth hormone, etc., I'm talking about that. I'm talking about how do I hack for the future so I have full optimal brain and physical health functioning. This is the recommendation. So 4 days a week, you want to be on the longer side. So about 60 minutes where you're doing 60 to 75% of your maximum heart rate. And 2 days a week, it can be shorter, but you're sprinting. So you are now 75 plus. So running or sprinting. So you want to try to do that for your brain health. I hope that was clear. Every single day, guys, we got to be moving and we got to be running. Heart rate is everything. When the body is stressed to a certain level, that's when it releases the growth hormone and the BDNF. So if we're just like, oh, I went for a walk with my friend and I went for another walk, great. It's good for creativity. It's good for antidepressant, but it's not going to protect against dementia. We need to get that blood pumping and that body moving to protect against things like that. So complex physical exercise is really the best exercise. So this is where you are like hand-eye coordination and you are doing skill-based like Pilates or ice skating, rollerblading, dancing, gymnastics, where your heart rate is increasing. Now, when you do that, you're now firing all kinds of stuff in your brain that is very protective against declining cognitive abilities. So even if you are going to do aerobic exercise, if you are going to do something non-aerobic, do something aerobic before that. So a lot of trainers will put you on a treadmill and then they will do weight training and then they will make you finish off with something aerobic. So you can do something like that, but complex activities are best. So find ways you can incorporate that in. Jump roping, keeping your eyes closed when you're working out. These are great ways for you to incorporate some complexity into your day. So you can make simpler movements doing something complex. So these little balance balls are really great. You can stand on that while you're doing training. You can walk or run on difficult terrain. So running on sand, running in, uneven grounds or unflat surfaces is really good for you because it's constantly challenging different parts of your body, but your brain as well. Do strength training on these kind of medicine balls and or try doing push-ups with your feet up on a ball. You get what I'm saying with the complexity. And when you are doing these kind of weight training, avoid as well, you can still do it. You can use the machine, but try to do free weights as much as possible. And you can even do things like close your eyes when you're doing that, because your body is trying to find balance. And as it tries to find balance, you are firing different parts of your brain. So again, this is just keeping the brain nimble and flexible. And these are ways to do it. Now do it with safety. I don't want you closing your eyes and like falling backwards and breaking something. Make sure that you're safe, but keep it fresh, keep it new, keep it exciting. And then remember, you're just shooting for that. Even things like yoga releases things like GABA. So, we get this like Zen feeling when we're walking out of yoga classes, because they found that yoga actually releases GABA in the brain, which is the anti-anxiety medication. But you can, close your eyes as you do yoga movements, or hold the stretch a little bit longer. Just challenge yourself. Even through these kind of simple exercises, we can make them a little bit more complicated. Research also says that when you join teams, it's really good for depression, and you have less bad mental health days if you are part of a team sport. This is why I'm a big fan of getting your kids involved in team sports, but you also getting involved in team sports. They require you to be in new environments. They break you out of your typical routine. They make you more social. And then research just shows that when you are forming friendships through hobbies, it actually helps with anxiety and depression and social anxiety. So it's a great way. So I think the study was published in Lancet Psychiatry and explored all the forms of exercise, which is best for mental health. And they found that all exercise is good, but the best exercise is team sports. I think we were just coded for that. We were coded to run in packs. We are a pack animal. We are not a sole animal. So I think these kinds of environments where you feel like you're part of a group class or a group thing and you meet the same people, like that is coded in us. So try to create as much of that as possible. And then, I'm checking for the time. We're still good. For families, it's really important that you get at least 1 hour, 3 to 5 times a week, but I would hold the same standard to my children as I do for myself, which is about 250 to 300 hours, like basically the same things, 4 hours plus 2 hours intense. So 6 days a week is where I would go for their brain and their physical and mental health. But this is the least they should do. You are going to be the seedbed for a physically active life. So who you are and what you do is going to seed in them what they do. And our job is to make sure that we make that a little bit easier. And when research looked at kids who were active, they had fathers who were active, mothers who participated with them. And so like we all go to the gym together, they go to their class, I go to my class, that type of stuff. They had positive enforcement from their parents and adult caregivers. They had sibling involvement. So like the whole family was active, and they were given options for their physical activity. My 2 sons, like one was a football player. The other one just like was not having it. He did not want to play football. I was like, you got to pick any sport. You got to pick a sport, but I don't care which one it is. You can be a runner, you can be a tennis player, you can be a golfer. I'm not sure, but you have to pick a sport. And he chose basketball. And so I think giving them options is going to be important. For my 7-year-old, she's not naturally inclined to be like, she's not one of those active kids. So I said, you've got to move every single day. What is it going to be? So gymnastics or Zumba. She loves dancing. And so we put her in Zumba classes. It's really important that they pick that. And also spend time outdoors. Now that the weather is nice, just be outdoors as much as possible. It is so, so good for you. Some additional considerations. There is something as too much exercise. So if you're exercising beyond the 5 to 6 hours a week, especially if it's rigorous exercise, then you really got to focus on your recovery. And that means you protein and hydrate and sleeping. Like there is no athlete who's not obsessed with their sleep, because in the sleep, you are actually recovering. So you must be obsessed with your recovery. Try to move build movements in your day. So like I said, 3 to 5 minutes every hour. So if you're sitting hour upon hour, Google sitting is the new smoking. It actually can result in certain cancers. You don't want to be sitting all day. You want to move every hour. If you're on a plane, if you're on a train, if you're in the office, if you're online, as much as possible. I don't even take Zoom calls, video calls anymore. I'm going to take a video. I'm going to take a phone call, and I'm going to be walking. I go outside, I walk up and down the streets, and as I take the call, but I'm going to get as much movement as I can throughout the day. Walk while you wait for doctor's appointment, take the stairs, get a further parking spot. Number 3 would be to work with a personal trainer, especially if you haven't done anything like this before, because it's important to learn proper form. You could actually end up injuring yourself, which could actually then create a whole lot more other issues. So we don't want to do that. And if you don't have the trainer and you don't have the time or the money to do that, then I would say slow and steady. Easy, light weights, heavy repetitions is where you want to go with that. Consider purchasing a wearable. This is very important because what you can't measure, you can't manage. How much sleep are you getting? How much movement are you getting? So let's see. Today I did not exercise in the morning. I'm going to have to do it in the evening. But yeah, it's not looking so good so far. So I've got to move around. So commit to exercise every single day. So in the beginning, until the habit is formed, you've got to focus on frequency rather than duration or intensity. So even if it's 10 minutes every day, just gear up every day. So that's the most important thing, is that you show up every day, and then you can extend it, and then you can make it more intensive, because all the research shows that you want to focus on frequency rather than duration and intensity until the behavior is established. And then lastly, don't forget to weave in stability, flexibility, and posture. Guys, posture has been linked to better self-esteem, more arousal, better mood, lower fear, better like positive language. Like when you sit like this, your body is sending a signal that I'm afraid. Having better posture, shoulders back, neck back. This is actually causing a lot of chaos within our vagus nerve. And so we want to include posture, flexibility, stability. The Huberman, actually Peter Attia, another podcast guy, talks about back casting. He says, let's just say you're going to live to 100 or 90. What do you want to be doing when you are 90 years old? I want to move. I want to be able to walk up those stairs with, 3 flights of stairs with groceries. I want to be able to pick up my great-grandchildren. I want to be able to sit on the floor and get up without, want to go to the bathroom by myself. I want all of these things. So mobility, flexibility, stability has got to be built into your regimen, because we are now moving towards that. And as soon as we enter school, we lose a lot of our stability because we sit all day long. So we need to build that in. As a woman, consider your cycle for your workouts. So if you are menstruating, or if you are in the luteal or the follicular cycle, parts of your cycle, you want to do different types of activities. I'm going to be doing a talk with Rebecca Carter of the Lighthouse next week, which is also open for the community, on syncing your life with your cycle. And part of that is exercise and diet and everything to help, because some days you're just like, oh my God, I can't move, but you still can move. You just have to move a little bit differently, because your hormones will impact your ability to repair, but also your ability to engage with what's in front of you. Have conversations with aging parents as well as your teens about the importance of exercise. I have 2 aging parents that I live with, and we go off for a walk. You're gonna go and you're gonna sweat, and I actually have to take them out, or then my brother takes them out. We literally take our parents out for physical movement so they can actually get the benefits for their brain and body. Morning exercise is recommended, and avoid rigorous exercise in the evening. But any time is better than no time. So like if you're going to do it at 5 p.m., do it. But don't do it so close to bed that now you have all of this adrenaline pumping through you that you're not going to get the deep rest that you need. And lastly, I would say just start. Please do not wait for motivation. It will not come. You've got to move, and the motivation comes. you've got to move, and the dopamine, the serotonin, all these other neurochemicals start to get activated. And then we start to look forward to exercising. So you have to do it in order for the motivation to come. Most people are like, oh, I don't feel like it. Yep, that's exactly when you should get up and go move. And I'm telling you, I struggle with this all the time. And I'm telling you guys, social media and technology is zapping out our dopamine. Dopamine is not just a reward pathway. It is the motivation pathway. We are less motivated to do anything when we have dopamine that is dysregulated. So just got to activate, and we've got to move forward and push through and say, I'm going to cultivate that dopamine. I'm going to cultivate that neuroserotonin. I'm going to release all of these endorphins in my body, and then it will start to get easier. Just move. When health is absent, wisdom cannot reveal itself, art cannot manifest, wealth becomes useless, intelligence cannot be applied. And here I am specifically talking about mental health. Guys, when we don't feel right, when our brain doesn't feel right, when we feel forgetful, when we feel out of control, nothing feels good. We can have all the strength in our body, but we will not have the will. We will not have the strength. We will not be able to activate. So really looking after our mental health and our brain health is going to be very important as we move into our late 30s and 40s onwards. That's all I have. Now I can take some questions from you guys. Yeah, so somebody said my audio is not working. No, I think my audio was fine. I hope it was fine because there's still quite a lot of people here listening. So the podcast that I mentioned two today. One was Peter Attia, The Drive. So just Google Peter Attia, A-T-A-I. And the next one was the Huberman Lab, H-U-B-E-R-M-A-N, Huberman Lab. Both these guys as Stanford guys, super engaging, super like the depth of the information. Like I have to sit down with my notepad to listen to those podcasts. I also listen sometimes when I'm walking. I feel like I retain better. But that would be, those would be the two that I would recommend. These are like my go-to. I want to know what these two guys are saying about anything that I'm researching. So they really condense things and make things easier to digest. So someone said, is it true that depression can manifest physically by a reduction of energy, motivation, change in appetite, sleep, which are all factors that can result in less motivation, even difficulty to make time to exercise? Knowing this, wouldn't it be idealistic to suggest a person who suffers from severe depression to exercise? Severe depression, exercise is one way you can work on depression. Remember, I said mild to moderate. Severe depression is very debilitating, guys. You need to see a psychiatrist for that. Oftentimes with severe depression, we don't even begin psychotherapy until we've worked on regulating some of that. So giving them a little bit more energy so they can start to engage in therapy and they can start to engage in movement. That's what we are working on when we are working with medication. So it's very important. And I have had depression before, and I know that it takes a crane to lift you out of bed at that time. And I also know that you can dig deep and still do it. It's extremely difficult. And that's why I think thinking about it as a full protocol rather than exercise being the end all be all for everything. Please do not hear me as I say, I am not saying that. I am saying it is one of the most important things you can do to have symptoms be alleviated, such as anxiety, such as issues of depression, anxiety, and addictions, and attention issues, and memory issues. But it has to be part of a full protocol. Your gut health has a lot to do with depression. A lot of people's, like Google microbiome and depression, microbiome and anxiety. Taking prebiotics, probiotics would be part of that. 90% of your serotonin, which is the happy chemical, which is an antidepressant, is produced in our gut. So what you eat does matter. How your gut health is does matter. Now, am I saying the gut health is going to remove all of depressive symptoms? No, but it ain't going to make it easier for you if you're eating Doritos and hoping that, you don't feel bad. Like, you can't have a diet that is not healthy and expect yourself to be feeling at optimal. You want to feel at optimum, you have to do the whole thing. And what is the whole thing? What did we do 1,000 years ago? We're coded for that. We're coded to eat from the earth. We're coded to eat, be around people, social groups. The number one protective factor against a lot of these issues is your social connections. It mitigates the effects of stress. Social connections. I can do a whole talk on that. This talk is about exercise and how it protects and releases chemicals that protect against and actually work towards healing. So one of the things, guys, just one of the things. So someone said, I've run out of my antidepressant medication for about 2 weeks and I feel like I can live without it. Guys, don't do that. Please don't do that. Do not get off of medication abruptly. Do not take medication without a psychiatrist's supervision. Do not get off without supervision, because it stays within your system and then one day it is no longer in your system and then you might start to feel certain things. If you are under supervision, they will taper off you off the medication. You do not have to stay on medication for the rest of your life. It's really important to just be on, and you will get off of it. And you will have all these other coping skills that are in place, and a good diet and good movement and good social abilities and all of the other stuff, or good social relationships, I should say. And then you don't need to be on medication, but being with a psychiatrist as you get off of medication, because you are now messing with your neural chemistry here. You don't want to do that without a psychiatrist. Please don't do that, because you are just making it harder for yourself. Because if something were to go wrong, it's much harder to pull you out rather than have it be supervised by someone who knows how to taper you off. They might give you half the dose. They might make you every other day. Then they might make you 3 days. Then they might make you, there's ways they get you off medication rather than abruptly stopping it. I don't know anyone that abruptly stops anything. I'm not a psychiatrist, but it is not something I would recommend. So, yeah, so I'm going to type the answer here. So you guys are asking. So Peter Ataya, I think that's how it is. It's called the Drive and the Huberman Lab. I'm typing it here. Good. So someone said, can you talk a bit more about the 40s and 50s and the changes we go through? Lots and lots of changes, especially women, guys. You are, you can enter in this kind of perimenopausal state at your 40s. As soon as you enter, a lot of these, hormonal fluctuations, very important to take care of. Look after do your blood work, check your hormones, check your, if you are going to do hormone replacement therapy, working with a doctor who is familiar with that stuff. The research supports that if you start early on some of these things, it's going to be much more protective than if you start when you've hit menopause. So you're going to want to start tracking that stuff. I started tracking it when I hit, I think maybe 38 years old. I started looking at my hormones every year, and I started looking at my blood work every year. So this is just preventative care rather than waiting for things to happen and saying, okay, where are the hormones at? And, now that I've hit my 45th year, I would say I would do it even every 6 months to just keep track of things, just because you can sense that the energy that you had or the focus that you had or the abilities that you had are shifting. Not to say that I have less of all of these things, but it's different. I'm far more deeply engaged with things rather than engaging with many things. This idea of like multitasking like really stresses me out, where I was like the queen of multitasking, not because I could multitask, but I could just think about multiple things at the same time. And I had multiple books open at the same time. That's just because my brain is wired that way. But I was able to do certain things then that I'm not able to do now. So I just want to know about my cycle. I want to know about my hormones. I want to know about my blood. This is what's going to be important. And at every age and stage, you want to understand your body. You just want to do that. And I think a lot of these doctors are going to recommend that you do your blood work once you hit 35. You want to check for cancers, you want to check for biomarkers, you want to check for all of these things rather than waiting for things to happen. And then we're like, oh, wait, let me just go check that. You don't want to do that. You actually want to do preventative care rather than treatment only. So let's see. Yeah, I think I've answered all these questions. I've answered. Any recommendations for exercise which can be done while you're working? There's exercise now. They're showing that if you do these sort of calf raises while you type, I would say still every hour, get up, move. Get a standing desk if you type a lot, sit on a medicine ball as your desk. So you have to stabilize yourself as you're typing. So there's many ways you can incorporate that into your workday. Stretching, during the day so you're not sitting, but I would not recommend sitting for hours at a time. You've got to get up and move around, go for a walk, especially in the middle of the day, go outside, get some natural sunlight in the morning, in the afternoon. This is really good for attention focus. If you have any grass patches near you, walk barefoot on grass, super grounding, very good for attention. It's very good for reducing inflammation. This is what you want to do and so these are just some things you can do during the workday. And now that the weather is nice, like you're not gonna melt if you go outside. And so I really recommend just, finding ways where you can build in some movement throughout the day, but on the hour. Someone said, won't it hurt your knees to stand for long times? Don't stand, move. No, it doesn't hurt your knees at all. It actually strengthens your knees. It's very, very important to move. And standing still is not good for you because it can, it's not good for circulation to stand or sit for long times, but moving is very good. And you just want to move different parts of your bodies. You want to stretch, you want to move your arms around as you are going through your day. But as much as possible, walk. As much as possible, walk. As much as possible, take the phone call and not the Zoom call. As much as possible, meet people in person rather than on a Zoom. So this is something that I can't stress enough. Movement disabilities, it would be very important that the parts of your body you can move, I would move. So if you can't, if you're in a wheelchair, move your arms, make sure that you're doing different stretches. It would be very important. And if you have movement disabilities, you probably have a physiotherapist or a physical therapist who will give you exercises. I'm not an expert on that, but I would probably engage with a physiotherapist or a physical rehab person who will give you stretches as well as movement exercises. All right, guys, if you guys have any questions that I didn't answer, please feel free to send me a message on LinkedIn or on my Instagram account, and I'd be very happy to answer it there. Thanks for being here. And guys, it's 30-30 in Dubai, so get moving. This is a great time. And it does take about 30 days for neural pathways to start binding together and really making things easier. So just every single day, if you don't move, make a commitment to just move. I'm just going to move today. And this is what I'm going to do, because I didn't get to exercise this morning because I had a talk at 7 in the morning. And so I couldn't exercise this morning, but I'm for sure going to be exercising before movie night tonight with my kids. So I'm going to get on that treadmill. I'm probably going to run for 30 minutes. And then I'm going to be moving throughout the day. I have a break now for 30 minutes where I'll make some phone calls and I'll be walking while I do it. So this is kind of how you want to think about it. All right, guys. I'll see you next time. And next week, I'm going to be doing that cycle syncing talk. I really, really recommend, and it's actually interesting for men too, because you have to relate to women, and for women to attend that event about how do you work with your cycle as and not against your cycle. It has changed my life. It has changed my relationship with my body. When I push it, when I don't, when I rest, when I nourish, all of that is going to be part of that talk. You can register on our website. And it's going to be next week. And if you're on Instagram, you can see the talk for it. I'll actually put it on my stories today, so you guys can register there. I'll see you guys. Bye.